Hare Krishna. Spirituality is not about suppressing grief, it is about transcending grief. When we hear from scripture how great souls are detached, and how, for example, the Bhagavad Gita says that Dhiras tatra na muhyati, it says in 2.13, Dehinosmin yatha dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara tatha dehantara praptir Dhiras tatra na muhyati. That the body changes, just as the body changes in this life from boyhood to youth to old age, similarly at death one goes from this body to another body. Tha dehantara praptir, and dhiras tatra na muhyati, and a wise person, a sober person, is not bewildered by such a change. Now this declaration of the Gita may make us think that to be spiritually advanced, we should not express any grief at the death of a loved one. We should become unemotional, stoic, and completely bereft of emotion, completely unemotional. And sometimes, because of this notion, in order to be spiritually advanced or in order to appear spiritually advanced, we may suppress grief. Now, if we suppress grief, grief doesn't go away. Actually, that grief stays inside, festers inside, and later on expresses itself in ugly ways. So, does spirituality require us to suppress grief? No, not at all. If we look at the example of the original student of the Bhagavad Gita, that is Arjuna, he lost several of his sons during the Kurukshetra war. His first son Iravan he lost to the Rakshasa Alambusha, who after Iravan was his son through a Naga queen, and when he lost him, he was hurt, he was distressed. And later on the 13th day, when he lost Abhimanyu, his very dear son through Subhadra, Arjuna was devastated. He broke down and cried fervently. In the Mahabharata, there are pages and pages of the description of Arjuna's grief. Now, Krishna did not tell Arjuna over there, hey, Arjuna, you have forgotten the Bhagavad Gita. What are you doing here? Don't be sentimental. No, Krishna was by Arjuna's side, consoling him, supporting him, and helping him to regain his composure. Not by any philosophical or self-righteousness, but by his gentleness and sensitiveness, and his encouragement and his kindness, just by being there as a shoulder on which Arjuna could cry. So Krishna does not ask for or approve a heartless state, emotionless state of stone-like existence in the name of spiritual realization. Rather, the speciality of Arjuna was not that he did not feel any emotions, not that he did not cry because of the emotions, but that he transcended those emotions. Sometimes when grief comes, some people wallow in the grief. Wallow means that they just get lost. They lose themselves in the grief, and they are no longer aware of where they are, who they are, what they are doing. And in this way, they bring suffering upon themselves. But in contrast, what Arjuna did was, in the very next day, he fought and fought more ferociously than ever before in the service of Krishna to avenge the death of the great devotee, the murder of the great devotee Abhimanyu by unfair means. So transcending grief means not that we deny whatever emotions we may experience in our relationships at the material level, but rather we are driven by a higher emotion at the spiritual level. So when there is emotional enrichment spiritually, at that time the material emotions don't shake us so much. So suppressing emotions means they are present but we don't express them. As transcending worldly grief means that because we are experiencing higher reality, we are experiencing higher emotional fulfillment in our eternal and eternally secure relationship with Krishna. Because of that inner security, we are able to transcend the grief. So bhakti, by solidifying our connection with Krishna, enables us to transcend grief and other worldly emotions. And while we are growing in bhakti, we don't have to artificially suppress emotions. If we feel grief at something going wrong, we can express it we among understanding friends and thereby get over it. So when we are very advanced, we are able to transcend grief just by within our heart. But otherwise, we may need a supportive social circle which enables us to tolerate and eventually transcend that grief. Spirituality does not require us to become emotionally starved and deadened and suppress grief. Rather, it wants us to ensure that our emotions are not consumed only by material things. So, by making ourselves emotionally available at the spiritual level, our spiritual we find the spiritual life itself to be so emotionally relishable and fulfilling that material emotions don't affect us so much. Thank you. Hare Krishna.